You watched that game and felt it. A home loss to the Texans, 2010, and suddenly the season doesn't look like a fight for seeding anymore. It looks like a fight for relevance. The scoreline is brutal, but the storyline is worse. The Chiefs now sit 6-7, and tonight felt like a clear snapshot of how this season unraveled. From the opening snaps, the offense never found the rhythm. Third downs kept slipping through their fingers. Too many stalled drives, too many punts. And by the time the final whistle blew, you were left with the uneasy feeling that this team isn't the same unit that pushed through games in years past. The turnover margin was costly. The Chiefs gave the ball away 3 times, and those mistakes erased any momentum the defense tried to build. The defense did enough in stretches, yes, but they also allowed a late touchdown to a player who'd had very few touches all year. That play cut right through the middle of coverage, and it was the kind of moment that leaves you shaking your head after the fact. Injuries changed the tone of the game early. Trent McDuffie went down with a knee problem and was visibly limited, and another offensive lineman, Wanya Morris, suffered an early injury that forced Kansas City to rely on their 4th-string left tackle. That's not the kind of depth test you want in a game with playoff implications. Yet somehow a 4th-stringer came in and had some bright moments. Still, missing 3 starting offensive linemen going into the game was always going to make sustaining drives and protecting the passer harder than usual. Meanwhile, play-calling choices left fans frustrated. A lot of shotgun runs to Isaiah Pacheco in the early downs that just didn't seem to wake the offense up. When the offense couldn't sustain drives, you saw frustration in Mahomes' body language and in a sideline that looked less urgent than it should have at this point in the season. And then there were the drops. Costly, momentum-swinging drops. Platitifu. That felt like they should have flipped the game or at least kept drives alive, ended in incomplete passes or turnovers. When your veteran leaders aren't holding up in the moment, you feel it as a fan. That sense was compounded by the comments we heard this week, the coach promising a turnaround, the confidence from the staff, and then the team failing to deliver on game night. Right now, the math is simple for you as a fan. 6-7 with inconsistent play, turnover problems, and continuing. Offensive line headaches equals a very real possibility of missing the playoffs. I know there are still believers who want to cling to the magic of Patrick Mahomes and the Reid era, but tonight's loss made it hard to argue we're just a tweak away. Before we dig into blame, fixes, and how the front office should respond, I want to know where you stand. Do you still think the Chiefs make the playoffs this year? Vote in the comments, yes or no, and tell me why. And hey, if you're finding these breakdowns useful, please hit like and subscribe to help the channel reach 6,000 subscribers. It really helps more Chiefs fans find the discussion. Let's put the offense under a microscope, because tonight made it painfully obvious where the Chiefs are breaking down: timing, protection, and play execution. Not just 1 or 2 flukes, but a pattern. Start with Patrick Mahomes. He's still the engine, but the engine hasn't been firing the way you expect. In this game, he finished with an extremely poor box score, the kind of numbers you don't usually see from him. A sub-50% completion rate, very low passer rating, and negative EPA per dropback that flagged him as having one of his worst outings. That stat line doesn't exist in a vacuum. Drops from key targets, missed connections, and a scrambling situation created by pressure and a patchwork offensive line all fed into that. Speaking of the line, missing 3 starters and relying on a 4th-string left tackle at home is not a recipe for consistent passing success. The unit's inability to sustain blocks on 3rd down and protect long enough for routes to develop turned many potential third and manageable situations into punts or risky downfield attempts. You could see it on film. The pocket collapses. Mahomes has to move fast, receivers are forced to adjust, and timing routes that used to be automatic became contested or late. Then there's the running game. Design and personnel choices felt stagnant. Repeated shotgun runs to Isaiah Pacheco early on didn't move the chains and left the offense predictable. When the running game isn't creating play action or forcing defenses to respect it, the offense loses a critical tool in creating space for deep shots and misdirection. Talent around Mahomes also didn't help. Veterans who usually make the easy plays had costly drops and missed assignments in clutch moments. When your leaders can't come through, it compounds pressure on the QB and the play callers. That brings us to scheming and play calling. You had public confidence from the coaching staff coming into the week, promises of a change, promises of tickling tonsils, but the game plan felt overly conservative at times, yet simultaneously poorly timed in aggressiveness at others. There were sequences where short, quick passes and creative spacing should have been the focus, but instead, the calls forced plays into crowded windows or tried to grind out yards with scripts that weren't working. Accountability here is layered. Offensive play calling and situational decisions must adapt in-game to what the defense shows. And tonight, the Chiefs often failed to adjust quickly enough. If you're thinking about fixes, they fall into three buckets: immediate schematic tweaks, faster rhythm passing, better max protect calls on clear pressure downs, clearer rotation and competition at receiver and tight end to weed out unreliable hands, and a serious evaluation of offensive line depth and technique. Both coaching and personnel before the offseason. Now I want to hear from you. Which offensive change would you make first? Overhaul play calling, upgrade the O-line, or shake up receiver, TE personnel? Drop your pick in the comments and explain why. And don't forget to like and subscribe to help the channel hit 6,000 subscribers. Every new subscriber helps amplify these conversations with more Chiefs fans. Reply C when you want me to move on to Chapter 3. Coaching, accountability, and the front office. Now let's shift the focus to a topic that a lot of fans have been circling for weeks: coaching, accountability, and the decision-making coming from the front office. When a team with Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Andy Reid is sitting at 500 this deep into the season, you have to look beyond the players on the field. Coaching has always been a stabilizing force in Kansas City, but tonight highlighted a real concern. The team is struggling in preparation and in-game adjustments more than we've seen in years. Pre-snap confusion on both sides of the ball, slow adjustments to Houston's pressure packages, and questionable situational decisions on third and fourth down all pointed to a staff that wasn't fully dialed in or fully prepared for a team they should have matched up well against. And it's not just the X's and O's. The discipline issues continue to mount. Drive-killing penalties, miscommunications in the secondary, and offensive timing breakdowns don't happen in isolation. They reflect practice habits and accountability standards Monday through Saturday. That's where coaching has to tighten the screws. You saw visible frustration on the sideline from both Mahomes and senior defensive players, and while passion is good, the lack of poise in key stretches magnifies deeper systemic cracks. Now let's talk front office, because roster construction has played a larger role in 2025 than many expected. The Chiefs have spent the past few years threading the needle, staying competitive while dealing with expensive core contracts. But some gambles didn't pay off this year. Depth at offensive tackle was clearly a risk. Depth at receiver was another. And relying on young, developmental players to grow quickly in a win-now window allowed too much variance. Even on defense, while the unit has carried much of the season, there are glaring gaps in interior depth and outside corner consistency that can't be ignored. None of this means Brett Veach is suddenly failing. He helped build 2 championship rosters. But it does mean that some previous strategies, like bargain veteran signings or late-round developmental swings, didn't meet the moment for a roster built to win this year. What fans want to know is, will changes actually happen? Will play calling be redistributed? Will certain position coaches face scrutiny? Will the front office make a mid-season move? Or is everything now locked in until the off-season? The truth is that accountability has to start with honesty. And this game might finally force that honesty internally. Now, I want your take on this one. Do you believe Kansas City's biggest problem is coaching decisions or roster construction? Vote in the comments. One word, coaching, or roster. And if you're getting value out of this breakdown, make sure to like the video and subscribe as we push towards 6,000 subscribers. Every subscription helps keep Chiefs coverage alive and daily. Let's get into the conversation that always rises to the surface whenever the Chiefs hit turbulence. Patrick Mahomes and the pressure he's facing, both literally on the field and figuratively in the national spotlight. A lot of national analysts love to point fingers at Mahomes whenever the offense stalls, but tonight's loss to Houston showed a clear, undeniable truth. Kansas City's quarterback is being asked to carry far too much of the load behind an offense that is still struggling with protection, spacing, and separation. When you watch the tape, you see Mahomes operating in chaos far more often than a quarterback of his caliber should. The interior offensive line had breakdowns on critical downs. Houston's simulated pressures caused hesitation in the backfield, and the tackle play, especially in long yardage scenarios, allowed too many free rushers to dictate the rhythm of the passing game. Mahomes has never been afraid of pressure, but when you force him into backyard football by necessity, rather than creativity, you limit the very thing that makes him special: controlled improvisation. You could sense the frustration building late in the second quarter and again in the fourth, not because Mahomes was off, but because he kept getting put behind schedule with penalties, sacks, and busted routes. But here's where the conversation gets more nuanced. Yes, Mahomes is being pressured physically, but the mental pressure on him has never been higher either. This is the first season in his career where he doesn't have a fully stable offensive core around him. Travis Kelce is still productive and still a leader, but he's no longer the same weekly mismatch machine he once was. The wide receiver room remains inconsistent. Rashee Rice is the closest thing to a reliable chain mover, but the rest of the group has been hit and miss. Hollywood Brown has flashed speed and separation, but hasn't become the true WR1 that many hoped. The run game, while intense and physical with Isaiah Pacheco, hasn't been able to dictate tempo the way it needs to in these grind-heavy matchups. So Mahomes has been put in a position where he has to be perfect, and that's simply not sustainable in the NFL. Even the best quarterbacks need structural stability, and right now, Kansas City isn't consistently giving him that. At the same time, let's give credit where credit is due. Even in this loss, Mahomes made throws that keep this team in games. He continues to show leadership and resilience, but he's human, and asking him to be the superhero every single week is a recipe for burnout and inconsistency. If Kansas City wants to turn this season around, the solution isn't Mahomes has to play better. It's everything around him has to tighten up and elevate back to championship standard. Here's your interactive moment for this chapter. Do you think Mahomes is being asked to do too much? Answer yes or no in the comments. And if you're locked in with the breakdown so far, make sure to hit like and subscribe as we push toward 6,000 subscribers to keep Chiefs coverage coming every day. So now, we arrive at the big question every fan is asking after another frustrating, momentum-stalling loss. Where do the Kansas City Chiefs actually go from here? With the season sitting on the edge, this is the moment that will define whether 2025 becomes a cautionary tale or a rallying point you look back on as the turning moment. The truth is, the Chiefs still control more of their destiny than it feels like. The AFC picture is chaotic, the wild card race is clustered, and Kansas City still has enough top-end talent to beat any team in the league on the right day. But the days of winning games on talent alone are over. This stretch will require something the team hasn't consistently shown this season: adaptability and urgency. That means operational discipline has to improve immediately. Penalties, missed assignments, late play calls, and drive killers have to be cleaned up. It also means embracing personnel adjustments with more conviction. If a rotation player isn't producing, the coaching staff can't wait until December to make a change. If the offensive line continues to struggle with specific combinations, they need to be re-evaluated. If wide receivers aren't generating separation, route concepts and snap counts should be adjusted instead of hoping things improve on their own. Defensively, there's still a foundation strong enough to win games, but the margin for error has shrunk. Kansas City needs cleaner tackling, sharper communication in the secondary, and more consistent pressure packages that don't rely on singular players to take over every snap. On offense, this next stretch is about finally finding an identity instead of drifting between concepts. When the Chiefs lean into timing, motion, and spacing with confidence, they look like themselves again. When they get conservative or reactive, the entire machine clogs up. More than anything, this team needs a spark. Whether that comes from a breakout performance, a statement win, or a surprising mid-season adjustment. Chiefs fans have seen this team climb out of tough stretches before, but this one will require unity, buy-in, and a willingness from every coach and every player to elevate. Nothing can be taken for granted anymore. The rest of the AFC has improved, and Kansas City has to match that improvement with execution, not just reputation. And before we close, here's your final interactive question. Do you still believe the Chiefs can make the playoffs this year? Drop yes or no in the comments. Your take helps drive the community conversation. And if you've been rolling through this full breakdown, don't forget to like the video and subscribe as we push toward 6,000 subscribers to keep you covered with daily Chiefs news and analysis. Stay locked with Total Chiefs News. Hail Chiefs!